Hello and welcome back to Fire Up Connect. This is your host, James Watson. We just finished up with Mike Gruley, EOS implementer, talking about his business management system. I'm now going to be focusing on the sales aspect of scaling sales processes and results for small to mid-sized businesses and going over some best practices in that regard. I am a fractional VP of sales. I have a passion for helping small business owners realize their sales goals and business dreams. And I specialize in creating custom sales plans that are tailored to each client's specific needs based on a collaborative assessment of their needs. Are you aware of how much money your company is leaving on the table? Oftentimes companies aren't. Are you maximizing client revenues and gaining new clients? Do you know what keeps your prospects and clients up at night? Do you engage in internal cross-functional collaboration? Do you have the right talent to achieve your revenue goals? These are all very important questions. They're questions that many people ask themselves, or they should be asking themselves if they're not. So why are sales revenues not increasing as planned? There are a multitude of reasons, but here's the top 10. There are no weekly sales meetings. You have an ineffective business development training. It may just be an individual that's starting the company out, and the CEO is the main salesperson, but that still doesn't mean that it's not important to have a process in place. In fact, it's critical to establish that process early on. You don't have any annual or quarterly metrics reviews. Again, if there's just one rep or if it's just an individual, these are things that oftentimes just aren't in place because people haven't thought about it. They're early stage in some instances, but they don't have these reviews, and they don't have a way of tracking what's going on. Part of that is not having a CRM, a customer relationship management system in place. You can do it on spreadsheets, but best practice is really to have a small business type of CRM where you're logging the information, being able to track the important metrics, and then getting some empirical data that you can rely on to determine what are the key performance indicators that you're going to need to achieve your goals, and also to understand how many people you're going to need to get there, and what kind of people you're going to need to get there, and what you need to pay them. In order to have a sales pipeline forecasting tool, you have to have a CRM or some kind of way of measuring and tracking, and then you can start to get an idea of what it takes, how much activity it takes to get in front of a prospect, how many prospects it takes to get a deal, what is the deal worth, what is the cycle for getting that business. These are all critical components, and so you really have to be tracking that as you're going along, but you also have to start with the end in mind and figure out where you want to be, and then work your way back to figure out what kind of activity is going to be needed, how many people are going to be needed. One of the big problems is that you have an improperly staffed sales team. Again, that sales team may just be an individual, in which case you may need to hire someone, or at least get a business development rep to set up more meetings. You don't have clearly defined sales metrics. You don't have a defined sales process. That's one of the things that are critical to establish early on. Really look at what are the objectives, longer range, and then break it down so that you can have short-term goals that are effective and actionable. Comp plan doesn't incent the correct behavior. Now, this is a kind of a mood issue if it's just an individual that is running the company and hasn't hired someone in yet, but it's still important when you do hire someone in that you do have the right comp plan to get the right person in place. And number one is not having a shared or detailed business plan, whether you're an individual, whether you have 10 people on your team. There needs to be collaboration, there needs to be ongoing communication and accountability, and that's the way that you're able to reach forward and achieve your goals. Some of the things to listen for, either in your own head, if you're just an individual running your own company, or within your organization. Too much of the annual revenue is coming from a couple different clients. This is also very important, if you're looking at some point to value the company and to have an exit. And exit planners will usually focus on this, not being too concentrated into a small set of clients where losing one or having one drop off some of their spend could be devastating to the organization. Being uncomfortable with the company's lack of sales activities and results, not being able to find the right sales rep. Could be because you just haven't used a recruiter, or you don't know where to find them. It could be that you're hiring the wrong people, and then you have turnover, and that all goes back to sales processes in place as well. The training that we put, presuming you have a sales team that you put your sales rep or reps through, didn't really seem to work. That's another important part of coming up with a sales playbook and onboarding, in a proper fashion. Most of our sales are referrals. That's great if you're getting referrals, but you can't rely just on that. There also has to be some proactive effort, particularly in a B2B type of business, where you are getting out and going to industry events, trade shows, and being very proactive and taking the leads that you're getting, maybe off your website, and having someone follow up. Usually takes many touches in order to get an audience. Why do companies fail to maximize their upside revenue? They have a lack of structure and resources. They usually will have a lack of process and collaboration. There's a lack of accountability and aligned incentives. The left hand's not necessarily talking to the right. The solution is to assess, number one, to assess your current sales personnel or processes, and then to build and implement sales processes once you understand, exactly what your target audience is, what it's going to take in order to hit the numbers that you're trying to hit. Then, looking at your current sales personnel or processes, determine the necessary manpower to achieve those objectives, and then create a specific job description and expectations. This also goes into having a good value prop that everyone is aligned with within the organization. Kind of your 10-second, 30-second elevator pitch. That'll also help you to establish your quotas, what the correct compensation should be, and what metrics you should be seeking to attain. So it's critical to hire right and or develop the current personnel. It's usually some combination of the two. That involves recruiting either on your own or getting professional help with recruiting, which is highly recommended if you're going for particularly a higher level or caliber individual. Screening those individuals, and then from a large sample, from a large group, and then conducting interviews, and then breaking it down to a top three, and then doing multiple interviews with multiple people within the organization, and then hiring the right person. Once you have that in place, if you don't already have a sales playbook, you need to create a sales playbook. Then you want to make sure that you onboard new hires and train the current personnel the same way that you would onboard a new person, so that they're all on the same page. And then having some kind of a certification process in place. This can vary in terms of duration of time, but then making sure that you're also setting up a mentoring type program where people are learning on the job. We need to assess and build sales processes. How do you do that? You've got to look at, again, what the sales revenue and profitability objectives are, and then reverse engineer into the necessary manpower, compensation, and the metrics. You need to create a statement of work. This is usually done on a collaborative basis with the executive team and people that can help guide in that regard. Then you want to build and implement the sales processes. That's going to involve weekly sales meetings, having a sales playbook, doing ride-alongs, or at least sitting in on calls so that you can coach, and then having weekly collaboration and assessments. What was accomplished in the past week? What are we going to be looking to accomplish in the next week? This all leads to open communication and is critical in order to have repeatable and predictable processes in place. Once you have a statement of work in place, you got to start acting on that. You got to start tracking the metrics to establish the sales cycle. You conduct those weekly sales meetings. You create the sales playbook, and then have some kind of a certification process in place. You need to be willing to drop things if they're not working and try new things out. So if we're going to hire right, we need to define the value proposition, and then make sure that we're going to be bringing people to the table and hiring someone that's going to fit not only into the position of from a sales perspective, but also into the culture of the company. Creating a job description is very important, in also having an interview form or process that you ask specific questions that are going to lead to the right candidates so that you can hire the right candidate. You need to define a value proposition before you can even do that, and think about what the culture of the company is. And that can be accomplished with internal or with external help from what we call value proposition workshops. You need to understand what your why story is. Why are you doing what you do? And then being able to come up with 10, 30, 60-second pitches and different variations of your PowerPoint, depending on what the situation is. So as a result of working with me, you'll get a solid and repeatable sales foundation. You get increased sales and profitability and reduced stress and frustration. You'll see, results in a multiple of different ways. I have, been doing what I'm doing for over 30 years, and I've helped a lot of individuals and teams and companies overcome adversity and, take their revenue and their, dreams in terms of business to the next level. And so what a fractional VP of sales does is coming in as a part-time, affordable VP or sales leader that can help to get the foundation in place when you're not quite ready yet and can't afford to have a full VP of sales. And then my goal is to replace myself after a period of time. And once that foundation is set up, and possibly even helping to bring in, that candidate and then passing the torch to them. I've worked with companies that are kind of mid-sized from 100 million and helped to take them to up over $2 billion. And then I've also worked with startups in early stages to get their first and second rounds of funding and everything in between. So what really makes me unique, separates me, is that I'm a hands-on builder that is capable of assessing and creating a tailored plan and implementing it to boost the sales and sales profits. So if you're interested in a complimentary assessment, please reach out to me at jwatson@salesacceleration.com. I can also be reached on LinkedIn under James Watson. Company is Sales Catapult. And my mobile number is 310-488-1864. Thanks for listening in, and we're going to go to station break now. And when we come back, I'll be giving a summary review of the two guests that we had, as well as the information that I just covered here. Thank you.